Box Up TV, get ready to rumble, rumble, rumble.
Here we could see Deontay Wilder bringing his lead arm to Tyson Fury for deception. The lead hand is meant to disrupt Tyson's reasoning in order to bring the power shot. Many boxers often adopt this technique in order to destabilize their opponent. Now, for the opponent whose technique and strategy is to be destabilized, they should understand that the defense system is made up of three components in this order. The first is the head movement, the second is the footwork, and the third is the blockage. Achieving the goals at the minimal dissipation of energy. It's easier and it's more swift for a boxer to move his head than to use his footwork. And then when you block, you're still going to take that punch anyway. You're just going to parry it. But you've used up some energy, much more energy than just bobbing and probably weaving so you can counter. Deontay Wilder brings his lead hand. The lead hand has three major purposes as well. Number one, to deceive the opponent, to make him feel that this is the plan, and then the backup plan and then the major plan just comes along all of a sudden. But Tyson, being experienced, he's already aware and he has made preparation for that Deontay Wilder's right hand. He keeps that as a joker and he brings this first and he just lands the power shot suddenly. So one is to deceive the opponent. Two is to block the view of the opponent. Anthony Joshua used this very often against Andy Ruiz in the rematch. Block the vision of the opponent and probably just lands this one unconsciously. And even if the opponent tries to lower, that blockage, he makes it worse for himself. Because for a boxer, your blockage should always be there. Block your chin at all times. Even if you have iron chin, block your chin at all times. But when something makes you tempted to remove your blockage, you become vulnerable. The worst of it is when the boxer parries with his own major hand. So if you're an orthodox, the right hand is your major hand. And if you are a southpaw, your left hand is your major hand. So Andy Ruiz often blocked many times. He parried Joshua's jabs with his major hand, thereby rendering him very, very much more vulnerable. He loses two things. A boxer loses two things when they block with their major hand. Number one, you lower your guard. Number two, you become disarmed in terms of counter. You can't counter. Even when you counter, it won't be all that effective because it's not your major hand. So that's why the head movement is the best. When you bob, you weave, and then you counter. Blocking with your major hand is as good as you are confronted with an assassin. An assassin is at your doorstep and you're trying to scare off that assassin with your last bullet. So your major hand is your bullet. You're not going to use that. You're keeping that for a counter. Peradventure, the opportunity comes. So let's keep watching this fight. Now look at Fury moves his head away. Fury has a mix of all these strategies all together. Look at Fury giving him an arm's length. He is already responding to that major plan. The major plan is to land that right hand. Look at Fury parries that right hand, grabs him. Fury brings the lead hand. Look at Fury removing Wilder's blockage, lowering his hand with that blockage. So these are some of the functions of that lead hand. Now, the major plan comes along, the power punch, it comes along. So as an orthodox, Fury would use his left hand to disrupt Tyson, to disrupt Wilder's defenses, and then brings the major hand. Look at it again. This is another case. Now here, Wilder is aware. He bobs away, but he has poor footwork. Then Fury was still able to catch up with him anyway. So you need to mix up all of them. Look at Fury giving him an arm's length because he's already responding to the major plan. The major plan is to land the right hand. So Wilder seems to be signaling Fury that the right hand is coming with the lead hand. So he's not using this technique properly. So a smart fighter would respond swiftly. Now Fury brings the same method back to him and he succeeds. Wilder seems to be distracted by Fury's lead hand. Look at Fury's lead hand, the left hand. Wilder foolishly submits his hands. Look at him to be handcuffed by the cops. Now Fury is the cop, is the boss, and he handcuffs his hands with that lead hand and brings the major. Yes, he brings the major shot. The fire shot works effectively. And look at Fury's eyes there, observing if Wilder is going to counter. Wilder has no such plan. Now Wilder wants to do the same thing to Fury, but Fury seems to be aware. He bobs. So you need to mix up all your defenses, head movement, footwork. Look at Fury bobbing and using his footwork at the same time, and then also blocking. So Fury used the three components of defenses that I mentioned. Now look at this part. Fury is going to do the same thing again. Wilder submits his hands to be handcuffed and Fury just throws the fire shot. Wilder is weak because of that fire shot. It becomes open to uppercut and Fury says, "You can be my guest," and backs it up with another jab. Look at Wilder trying to do the same thing. Fury bobs and counters immediately. So sometimes a fighter can counter that plan immediately. Wilder submits his hands to be handcuffed with Fury's lead hand. Then the power shot comes along. It works, boom, perfectly. So these were the techniques behind Fury's victory on that night. Now, round 3. Wilder tries to do the same thing again by signaling Fury. Look at Fury. He just bobs his head and that power shot has no power. He bobs and he counters because he has his defense, his major weapon intact. He didn't block with his major hand. Rather, Fury blocked with his lead hand, land his own shot because Fury's head movement is top notch. Then Wilder opened to another uppercut again. Fury gives it to him. Wilder tries to respond, but he misses because his shots are not accurate. Then becoming open to Fury's counter. Fury brings his power shot, right hook, left hook to the shoulder. Now look at Wilder submitting his hands like a criminal to Fury's handcuff. Now look at Fury's power shot coming open and clear. So Fury is using the lead hand effectively on Wilder, and Wilder is just foolishly submitting himself to the same technique he brought first. Now he's destabilized, his equilibrium is destabilized, his head is down, a very dangerous thing to do, open to an uppercut, and Fury would take advantage of it immediately to take advantage of that opportunity. Fury mixes it here. Look at Fury using his power hand to parry and then becoming open to Wilder's shot eventually. Then Fury on feeble legs, Wilder did no extra thing than to just push him and Fury falls. Look at Wilder trying to do the same thing again. Fury has learnt his lesson. Look at Fury's head movement here. I'm going to show you the importance of head movement. Look at that. Look at that. If he weaves, he will be able to counter right here, but the reflex wasn't fast enough. Look at Wilder trying to do the same thing again, signaling Fury. Fury just bobs away from it, bobs again, and weave. Now he could counter here, but he's already weak. So all he could do is just to grab Now look at Fury is going to counter right now. 1, 2. That's exactly what Wilder was supposed to do, you know. Now let me show us how Fury fell prey to that trap from Wilder that earned him the first knockdown. This is the second knockdown where Wilder had to hold his head in place and just knocks him. Now look at Fury, right hand, falling prey to that trap, lowering Wilder's blockage. Then head-on collision is the worst shot ever. His head collided with that power shot coming. He did the wrong thing right here. Let's look at it again. Look at Fury's power hand on the right. He's an Orthodox. Look at Fury. He was supposed to bob his head as usual, but rather he lowered Wilder's blockage with his power shot, becoming helpless to that assassin. And assassin shoots him, and he pays for that big mistake. And that was how that first knockdown lead hand. Wilder trying to test his own lead hand also. Fury quickly does it again, and he succeeds again. Bringing Wilder's face to himself. Come here, boy. He jabs him directly to his face. Look at Wilder's legs. Entangled. Poor footwork. Look at that poor footwork. Against the ropes. Hasn't learned his lessons. Look at that. So open. Wilder's defenses are poor. No head movement. No footwork. No blockage. Wilder's blockage is more or less like submission of his both hands to be handcuffed. Fury walking majestically like the boss. Now Wilder's power shot came first. He wanted to back it up with the left hook. A miss again because his shots are wild and inaccurate. He becomes open. Fury lands that right shot because of that opening. He had this opportunity the second time in round 10. And he took advantage to knock Wilder down. Fury takes his lead hand, and both of them now are aware. So they give each other an arm's length away from each other. Fury now decides to mix up his shots. Fury has changed his strategy, goes to the body and goes back upstairs. Then he has a good landing again. So we're going to be seeing that again against Otto Wallin. Wilder open to uppercut. Each time Wilder is hit, he is open to uppercut. The time you tangle is the time you reason. Fury uses that time to reason. He lands his lead hand, left hook and right hook, and that same technique ended the fight. Let's look at the fight between Fury and a southpaw, Otto Wallin. Why Fury doesn't want a highly technical and top-notch southpaw like Oleksandr Usyk, because Fury has tasted a southpaw and he knows just what it means. Now look at Fury's lead hand. This southpaw guy bobs his head and Fury's lead hand is not doing the job he expected, as he did in the case of Wilder. Look at Fury brings his lead hand. Wallin bobs away from him. Look at Fury's lead hand again. He bobs again. Fury backs up.